and welcome back to Inclusive Design 24 2021, brought to you with huge thanks to our platinum supporters, Intopia, Fable, TPGI, ARC, and Adobe, and our gold sponsor, Tetralogical. A reminder that you can follow all the action on Twitter through our account at ID24Conf. And if you have questions for our presenters coming up now, you can post them on Twitter with the hashtag ID24. I'm really happy to welcome another of our ID24 regulars back as guest host, Ariel Fox. Ariel, take it away.
Hi there, happy to be back helping to host friends. So next we have Jenny DeLisi and Glenda Sims with their talk, Your Brain is Welcome Here. Digital spaces need a new welcome mat. Over to you, Jenny and Glenda.
Awesome, thanks so much. Hi, I'm Glenda, and I want you to know that your brain is truly welcome here. We're getting ready to explore how we really need this new welcome mat. But before we get started, I want to let you know that the first part of our presentation is in a storytelling style. Some of our slides will have pictures, no words. If your brain learns best with text, you may find it helpful to grab a pencil and paper to take notes, or perhaps you'll want to turn captions on. Do what works best for you. Now, let's begin. A burst of rainbow powder fills the screen. Each grain of color brings a different perspective to light. We really are welcoming differences here. Feeling welcome rarely happens by accident. It takes awareness, planning, and purposeful action. Let's be aware that not everyone is just like me, and not everyone is just like you. Let's take time to think about people with different needs and perspectives, and purposefully create experiences that are friendly, kind, and welcoming. An image of a lush green park fills the screen. Sunlight filters through the leaves of a beautiful oak tree. As people, we have so many differences. As I look at this image, I focus on the beautiful shades of green, but are the greens that my brain is seeing the same that your brain is seeing? We totally accept that some people will have very different experiences. For example, if you are green colorblind or have no light perception. Our image of the lush green park has lost its color. It's gone grayscale. But as we look through a pair of lenses, those who can see color can still get a glimpse of the greens. Not only are we different from each other, but we also may experience individual differences over time. How we see things, how we experience life can change due to things like medication, age, injuries, health. I'm personally having a harder time seeing. I've recently been diagnosed with cataracts. The greens that I'm seeing today are much dimmer than the greens that I was seeing 10 years ago. On screen is a very hot cup of coffee. As individuals, we have differences in how much is enough. For example, is there one right temperature for a cup of coffee or tea? No way. We respect that each person has their own individual preference. And can I admit, I own an Ember coffee mug and that my personal perfect coffee temperature is 130 degrees Fahrenheit, 54 degrees Celsius. Yes, I'm that nerd. Let's extend this respect of individual preferences into our digital spaces. How wonderfully welcoming it can be when your digital experience can be adjusted to your needs. Like, how do you like to get info? Do you prefer audio, text, video? How much info do you need? Now, the first time, the 100th time? Where is your too much line on a good day or a not so good day? And how we engage with digital content can be different based on the content itself. Different between people, different for you based on your situation. I'm going to give you a little example through a story. The first time I made spinach ravioli from the old family recipe, yes, I'm a quarter Italian, I didn't have my grandma or my mom next to me to teach me. All I had was a handwritten recipe that was pretty dang vague. A pinch of this, some of that. I'd never made pasta from scratch in my life. I was so intimidated. I didn't think I could do it. I felt really alone. And I finally dawned on me, okay, the recipe is not going to get me there. I needed to pull up a YouTube video of someone making pasta. And I found one that appealed to me and watched it over and over and over until I gained enough confidence to say, you know what? I can try it and it's okay if I fail. I can just start over. I've got plenty of flour and eggs. And so this is an example of content, and the delivery medium of just text wasn't good enough for me. And I needed video. I needed to be able to play it over and over again. And my current learning state, I was blocked because I was so intimidated. And it wasn't until I relaxed that I could gain access to my brain. We also have differences in our tolerance for mistakes. On screen is a peaceful image of balanced rocks. Think about times when you've been very tolerant of your own mistakes and times when it felt like you had zero tolerance. Our tolerance for mistakes change. Imagine if I am thinking one strike and I'm out. There's, by definition, no tolerance for mistake. Or if I enter a situation and I think, oh, this system never works, I have a very low expectation for it working, low expectation of success. I'm going to give up quicker. Versus a high tolerance may be a mental attitude of, I'll show them I'm going to beat this. Or walking in with a resilient attitude. I'm willing to fail and I'm willing to try again. And that's okay. And that's normal. Perhaps a person has a lower tolerance for mistakes because they're just having a stressful day. And you know what? These differences, they're okay. And we need to respect the differences and see if we can create a place that supports that. Now that we've explored some of our differences, let's hear from Jenny how we can genuinely be welcoming to diverse needs.
Thanks, Glenda. This is Jenny. So on screen is a welcome mat, and it's at the beginning of a lush garden. It has two long sides, the host side and the visitor side. Both sides are important for the host to consider. The host space can be controlled by the host. They can learn about ways to make it more welcoming. The visitor's side, where they're coming from, it's important to consider as well. Glenda spoke about the learner state a little bit already. As they enter, their abilities, their personal history, their immediate history, all impact their experience crossing over into your space, whether it's physical or digital. On the visitor side, how do you know you are welcome? This lakeside picnic table looks very welcoming to some. But if you use a walker, you may have difficulty with the change in height between the different heights of the grass and the cement. If you use a wheelchair, you may find this picnic table does not have an overhang without table legs in the way, so you could be close up to the table. People entering digital spaces get clues as they enter as to whether or not they're welcome. Do they feel successful as they begin to use your space, or become frustrated, lose their confidence? This door is to a restaurant. If you are entering, what makes you feel welcome? We're going to ask you to take a moment on Twitter using the hashtag BrainFriendly and the other hashtag ID24. And we want you to add some items there that make you feel comfortable when you enter a restaurant. And I'm going to pause for a second while you're entering that. And there are many things you could have said there. Here are some that we discussed while we were preparing this talk. This couple smiling in the doorway with a glimpse to a nicely lit restaurant focuses on interactions. The reactions you get as you appear, as you move around the space, they all impact how you feel. In digital spaces, there are many types of interactions. The friendliness of the interface, the error messaging, and the form field hints provided, and the tone of the text. Now we've added a wallboard menu with chalk drawings on it. How information is presented really matters. Is it in your language? Are there pictures, text, or both? Is it easy to find when you need it? In digital spaces, the visual presentation of information contributes to how welcome we feel. We know that there are great ideas that you'll be adding into this Twitter chat, and we encourage you to review them another day as you consider, does technology welcome you? We can take those same concepts from the restaurant and apply them to different interactions and components of digital spaces. This is a hamburger menu icon, no pun intended, and the word menu and a pairing of the icon and the text. For some, this feels very comfortable, familiar. But what if we change the icon to a spoon, knife, and fork? Do you feel confident knowing what this does now? We also changed the font style to cursive. Does this make it easy for you to quickly look around a site to find what you need? Are you going to feel confident using the options as they are now displayed? And can you use this as quickly? Might you make more errors? What if the icon and the text treatment were for help within an interface? Could someone feeling lost within your website, possibly someone with Parkinson's, experiencing changes to their memory or their cognitive abilities, how easy is it for them to find your help page? All they may need to be independent using the site is a reminder of where to find an important form or the phone number for customer service. The host responsibilities begin with opening your mind. David Dunning and Justin Kruger, two psychologists, they discuss the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is the ability to recognize our own deficiencies in knowledge or competence. When we are new to a topic, we may have more confidence in our knowledge than we should. When considering the needs of people with cognitive disabilities, which is a very broad group, even with the years of digital accessibility experience, we need to park our Dunning-Kruger horse at the curb. While the woman on screen looks as if she feels very confident, is her mind really open? Could she and those of us in digital accessibility be overestimating our knowledge in this area? People who work in digital spaces are smart. They are dedicated. But we are all human and have limitations as to what we currently know. Part of the host responsibilities include considering what we may not know, as the woman is doing now. Your expertise in one area may have influenced how you've approached the topic of cognitive disabilities in the past. Take time to question your biases that you bring to this topic. We all have them. And we're going to talk more about that later in this presentation. The host responsibilities include studying and learning as the woman is doing now. Read, watch videos, and whenever possible, talk to some people with cognitive disabilities. Jamie Knight says, if you have met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Let's expand that concept to people with dyslexia, people with Down syndrome, people who've had a stroke or concussion that impact their brain function, either a little or a lot. This is a big field of study and an important one for those of us in digital accessibility. We must learn where our digital spaces are a barrier. And as the host, as we learn, we must take moments to celebrate each win and then learn some more. We must learn to open more doors, provide more welcoming entrances for people with cognitive disabilities. As we consider the door to our digital spaces, some people want and need a door where they can see what is happening before they fully enter. Will the visitor know what may be expected of them if they enter? How long their involvement may be, for example, if they're completing an online form? For an online meeting or conference, do they have the same experience they may have when at an in-person conference? Can they look in before committing to attend? This restaurant has a greeter right at the front door. For some, this is very helpful, but for others, this can be too intense. Can I enter but not be required to be on the stage right away? Can I just listen first? Consider the default settings for microphone and the camera of a virtual space. Can I choose my default settings and control my entrance? Some people need even more time before sitting down at a restaurant or just prefer the stools by the counter. They may prefer to sit away from the others. At an in-person conference, many of us prefer the back, slightly in the dark, not directly in the sight line of the presenter. When we have experiences like breakout rooms that feel like they're physically picking us up and moving us from one room to another, are we respecting that some individuals may have anxiety or difficulties that make this transition not only disruptive, but will cause them to leave the experience? And what about the exit? Is it clearly marked? Easy to leave, but come back when ready? Can the person leave without an extended process? Some viewers may not be old enough to recognize this cassette tape with the tape all pulled out and someone attempting to wind it back up. But for those of us who are old enough to remember, this can be a tedious, time-consuming experience. In the article 10 usability heuristics, which we've linked in the description for this video, the author writes, users often perform actions by mistake. They need a clearly marked emergency exit to leave the unwanted action without having to go through an extended process. When it's easy for people to back out of a process or undo an action, it fosters a sense of freedom and confidence. Exits allow users to remain in control of the system and avoid getting stuck, feeling frustrated. Are there steps you as the host of a digital space can take to create these more welcoming spaces? Glenda, are you ready to share more about those steps?
You bet. So, how welcoming is your content? How safe is your content? Have you ever realized you needed to add a content or a trigger warning? If you're already in the know about digital accessibility, you'll be aware that some flashing content may cause seizures, and that WCAG offers us ways to measure and avoid common flashing trigger rates. We've also learned that movement and animation can cause dizziness, but what about other types of content that could cause problems for our audiences? Some sensitive topics can cause stress or even be a trigger for PTSD or trauma. I had a super interesting experience at AXCON 2021. Earlier this year, DeCue hosted this online accessibility conference. And during the conference, a few attendees said they had a concern that at least 2 of our sessions needed content warnings. The first one was Val Head's Making Motions Inclusive, and the second was Eric Bailey's Be the Villain. I was initially puzzled. I thought, well, what in the world in our accessibility conference needs a content warning? And then I scolded myself. And I said, Gwendolyn Sims, watch the recording of both of those sessions before you think one more thought. Sure enough, I watched both sessions and realized that they needed written content warnings. I will say both speakers, Val and Eric, did an excellent job of doing verbal content warnings in their sessions, but we wanted to add more. And let me emphasize that both of these talks are excellent. And I would never recommend removing them. I even recommend you go watch them. But we needed to do a little bit more. I don't want to discuss the specific sensitive topics that were in Eric's session, but I have a write-up of it. And so in the description of this ID24 video, there's a link to our blog post where we put our lessons learned of how we handled this content warning situation. So how are you going to handle content warnings? I'll tell you, it's really just plan, prep, and do. You can brainstorm a list of potential sensitive topics. You could even use our blog post as a starting point. Think about whether these topics might naturally occur in your event or if they might organically happen in a chat. And think of ways to communicate those content warnings ahead of time, right before the event, and during. Make sure those potential topics are identified so that you can communicate them to your speakers, because how is the speaker going to know to give a verbal content warning if they don't even know what sensitive content is? And in a live scenario, being able to communicate that this is about to happen, that the sensitive content is about to appear, so that your space is not just welcoming, but it's safe. Now I'm going to go back to Eric Bailey's talk, Be the Villain. And he did a fantastic job of verbally announcing at the beginning of his session. But if anyone missed that verbal warning in the beginning of the session and came in 5 or 10 minutes late, they were really surprised by the content. There was no warning for them. And so I worked with Eric and discussed it with him and also chatted with Val and a few other people that had reported it. And we decided to add a written content warning in the title of the session, in the HTML title of the description page of the session, and even in the H1 of that same page. And you may think, wow, she really overdid that. Why did we put it in so many places? Because we care. And we didn't want to cause anyone harm. And what I learned through this experience is that a content warning is not just about avoidance. It's not just about, oh, I don't do that topic. It can be a decision point, an informed decision point where a person can determine, I will decide to go in to this event. I'm glad to know the content warning is there. I'm going to go in with my defense shields up. Or they say, you know, I'm having a stressful day, or that topic is just not going to work for me, and they can choose not to enter. Knowing is everything. Knowing is empowering. Controlling distractions is also part of creating a welcoming digital space. Imagine you're in a large virtual meeting. Multiple people are talking on microphone, and there's a lot of activity going on in chat all at the same time. Did you know that some people need ways to actively engage, like in chat, to stay focused on the presentation? While others may need to turn these options off so that they can focus on the speaker. So as you're planning your digital spaces, consider the varying needs of attendees. Think about what distractions may occur. Create ways for people to reduce those distractions. A good idea is to provide easy instructions for turning off chat, especially for screen reader users. And then test to make sure that it really works on that platform, that you can get the distractions off. You can also set expectations at the beginning of meetings or events, clearly stating what etiquette is appropriate to support focus and attention. And with some groups, large groups or new groups, you may find it beneficial to demonstrate how to actually reduce distractions. So how can we create more sensory-friendly spaces? Sometimes I want fireworks. Real fireworks. But I know not everyone even likes fireworks. Sometimes I need to sit quietly. But you might find sitting quietly by the lake right now so boring that you fall asleep. What I need and what you need can vary by day or even by hour. It's really personal. So what if someone needs a space that is quiet or lower volume and somebody else needs one that's loud? And what if I need to be around fewer people or even alone when someone else needs more people? You may be thinking, Glenda, how in the world can I create a sensory friendly space that makes everybody happy? Well, let me give you some ideas. Movie theaters have figured this out. They have specific show times with lower volumes. There are events at museums, for example, with reduced capacity, fewer people on purpose to create these spaces. Creating areas for different needs is how you can solve this problem. You can have quiet spaces and different places for being loud. You can have a space for being active and moving and a place for being still. I love to explore quiet spaces at physical conferences. You remember the before times? I've actually been in a conference nap room. It was dimly lit and had hammocks. They even handed out earplugs and eye masks. I loved it. If we get to have AxCon in person someday, you know I'll be lobbying for that kind of quiet space. So we've spent a little time thinking about how we can create more welcoming spaces by lowering stress triggers and distractions. We've also considered that some people need to be quiet while others need a place to be loud. Now let's see what Jenny has to share about making our digital spaces even more brain friendly.
Thanks, Glenda. Hi, this is Jenny again. You can also support your visitors by ensuring that memory is not required and provide reminders. I visited a program in Denmark for people with developmental disabilities in the early 2000s that still has an impact on me. In the cupboard, in the kitchen, there were cupboards with solid doors, just like in this photo. Individuals with memory challenges were helping to empty the dishwasher and put away the groceries. How did they support them? They added an image on the outside of the door of what was inside. In our digital spaces, we can support our visitors to know, what does this do? What will be on that page? How can I get back here? What information is needed when entering my phone number into this form field? How do I get a turn to speak in this digital meeting? And that one is important to remember, that it's both the digital interaction, but also the etiquette, the meeting rules. And now you can see on the screen, there's the dish and the cup picture that's now on the outside of the cupboard. The concept of cognitive fatigue is discussed by some as something called spoon theory. If you imagine that each of these spoons on screen has energy, and the energy is precious and a limited resource and more difficult to replenish than it is to use. Throughout a digital experience, there can be energy stealers, distractions, triggers, frustration. These may have an even larger impact on some people with cognitive disabilities. The energy it takes to complete a process within a digital space can be its own type of digital barrier. But there are models to help you consider the needs of people that use your digital spaces. Is your brain one that likes puzzles? Thinks in pictures or numbers? Understanding your own brain can help you understand the brains of others. Let's talk now about Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. The Universal Design for Learning guidelines pictured on screen demonstrate that we can provide multiple means of engagement, representation, actions, and expression. Consider this like the universal design of a ramp being present when the door is higher than the sidewalk. We have a link to these UDL guidelines in the description for this video. Focus on the phrase multiple means. When individuals have different ways to understand what is happening in your digital space and they interact, it is more likely that they can find and use one that meets their needs. This is essential for some with cognitive disabilities. The left portion of this graphic, engagement, looks at what can be done to minimize distractions, what motivates people to keep going through a process. The middle section is representation. This discusses how information can be customized to promote understanding. The right side of the image is action and expression. We organize information and then act on it. Providing tools to support this organization, giving people multiple ways to respond. These are key when interactions and responses from people using a digital interaction are what is actually wanted by the host. While there are many concepts of UDL included in the Digital Accessibility Standard, like ensuring there is more than one way to find a web page within a set of web pages, the UDL guidelines provide a scaffold for designing a digital experience that is more welcoming to all, including people with cognitive disabilities. Let's take a closer look at the digital space you are in right now, the YouTube page for ID24, with UDL in mind. And so when you use the navigation within the page, are you focusing on the words home and explore in the top of the image, or the icons of a house and a compass, or both? Do you prefer the bottom image, which has the areas of the page where you can use the text to find videos, playlists, and community, where there are fewer icons? How about the search? Do you typically type into that text box or use the microphone icon and speak to enter? When you are learning during one of these ID24 sessions, are you accessing the audio, the visuals, the videos of people's faces, or all of it? Does the transcript, the text representation of what is being said, support your ability to decode what people are saying and possibly help you remember it? This how of learning, again, may support everyone, but the options may be essential for some with cognitive disabilities. And it's true, my needs may conflict with yours. When we use the example of haptic feedback or vibration, the first person in this picture may find it helps them pay attention. The second may find it uncomfortable. The third may find it distracting. The fourth person may find it actually physically uncomfortable. And the last person may not find it helpful, but they may not find it to be a problem either. The ability to personalize interactions is key. A support for one person may actually be a barrier for another. And as we increase the ability for people using digital spaces to customize, we are opening more doors for people with cognitive disabilities. How do we do that? I know Glenda has some great ideas to share. Ready, Glenda?
I am. So as we create our digital spaces that are brain friendly, there is a lot we can learn from games. I've been inspired by the book Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal. Jane believes that games can make us better and that by applying game theory to real life, we can change the world for good. Games are unnecessary obstacles we volunteer to tackle. It's a direct quote from Jane McGonigal. Think about it. When we play games, we're adding obstacles to our life. What? Isn't life hard enough? There must be something magical going on here. And indeed there is. Well-designed games are fascinating. They're so welcoming that as a society, we spend countless hours playing them. Let's see if we can figure out why. So let's compare real life to games. What does this describe? Real life or a game? Clear goals, satisfying, motivating feedback, rewards for good work, can be personalized. Does that describe real life or a game? And what about these 5 elements? What do they describe, real life or a game? Overwhelming, frustrating, confusing or no feedback, set up for failure, one size fits nobody. I don't know about you, but I often find that real life is overwhelming and frustrating. And the good games that I play clear goals, satisfying. And so let's be inspired by Jane McGonigal to build our digital spaces based on game theory. An important element of a successful game is a state of flow. When you play the game and you are in that state of flow, it is engaging and satisfying. Being in a state of flow or in the zone is a delightful experience. You feel enough of challenge that you're not bored, but at the same time, the challenge is not so great that you feel it's impossible to achieve. The challenge is just right for your skill level and your ability. We want people to experience the same state of flow in our digital spaces. What else can we learn from games? Great games have engagement loops, the same kind of engagement loops we want in our digital space. In game theory, player engagement has 4 elements. The player's motivation brings them to the game. The player performs their actions. For their actions, they receive rewards. And at a certain point, they move up in achievement levels. And it's satisfying enough that they want to repeat the loop. Game design also clearly recognizes that what is motivating to a novice can be different from what motivates an intermediate or an expert. As we consider how brain-friendly our digital spaces are, we can use this engagement loop model to ask ourselves the question, for the people who are not like me, what motivates them to engage? What is rewarding for them? What keeps them coming back? I learned about this particular topic in a book published by O'Reilly called Gamification by Design. Excellent onboarding games is a very welcoming experience. Good games reveal complexity slowly, give positive feedback, and make it easy to succeed and hard to fail, and let you customize the experience. Why? Because in a game, if the player does not enjoy their first experience, they are really likely to leave and never come back. This is true of our digital spaces as well. If you've used the Slack communication tool, you may have noticed how Slack borrows from game design. For example, when you add a new workspace in Slack, there is a simple 3-step onboarding experience. Step 1 encourages you to send your first message in that workspace. And the task is designed to be really easy to do and will provide immediately positive feedback. So as you design your digital spaces, think about how welcoming you are to your newest members. Remember what we've just learned from game design? One size does not fit all. And if you think personalization is a convenience, I need you to think again. I need you to check your assumptions. Not everyone is like you. Not everyone is like me. And in the area of cognitive accessibility, personalization is absolutely essential. If we're going to say that we value differences, we need to actually support the needs of individuals. We need to let people select what works for them. So today we've shared a number of ways to create a more welcoming space for all minds. What are some ways that we can be purposefully welcoming? Remember how Jenny described the importance of being able to check things out before entering, to allow people to enter at their own pace, and to pick if or when they interact with others. Jenny taught me that one. And how important it is to be able to exit easily at any time. I shared valuable information on how limiting distractions and creating safe space through content warnings makes a space purposefully welcoming. And both Jenny and I are sharing the importance of essential personalizations that respect individual needs. And You don't need to do all these things at once tomorrow or this afternoon. By beginning to add just a few of these features to your digital spaces, you can open the door to more and more people, to more and more minds. And, you know, somebody's going to ask, what if somebody needs more than we've provided? The baseline? Well, what is your accessibility standard set by your organization? And that's a minimum baseline. And what happens when someone says they need more? I'm going to challenge you to take a deep breath and relax when somebody says they want more. I want you to recognize it as an opportunity, a chance to listen, a chance to care, a chance to learn. And with a curious mind, I'm going to ask you that when somebody asks for more, could you imagine that the person making the request is someone you love? I'm not asking you to grant their every wish, but I do want you to think differently. Brainstorm solutions. And if you can't figure it out, you know what? This is exactly the kind of thing that we love to brainstorm about as a group. Reach out to experts in the field of disability, equal opportunity, and accessibility. Because, you know, the goal is to actually create win-win solutions. Solutions that actually make things better for all. Universal design. And, you know, if you're looking for a few experts to brainstorm with, or you're just interested in doing some research in the field of cognitive accessibility, I need to let you know that there is a fabulous team at the W3C that's hard at work. The team has published, for example, a document that I highly recommend reading called Making Content Usable for People with Cognitive and Learning Disabilities. And I also recommend reading articles by Gareth Ford Williams. We think he's brilliant. And I suggest that you consider signing up for the State of Minnesota Accessibility Newsletter. Why? Because Jenny's one of the editors and she's cool. You can find a link to the description for these things in our ID24 session on YouTube. And on screen is a photo from a W3C Cognitive Task Force meeting held in the UK in January 2019, I think. Jenny is the second person from the right, and I'm in the front left. So we've reached the end of our formal presentation, and we have a question for you, because now it's time for you to make a difference. How are you going to welcome more minds? We encourage you to tweet your answer to that question using the hashtag BrainFriendly, and let's open the floor to questions.
Thank you, Glenda and Jenny. What a wonderfully thought-provoking talk. I feel like I've just got so many ideas buzzing around. So that was amazing.
Thank you.
Ariel, what have we got for questions?
Yeah, I feel like that talk was kind of made for me. It was all of the things that I love about accessibility, including gaming. So I love to hear about gaming being included in accessibility and inclusivity talks. So there are a few questions. Please put them in Twitter as well using our ID24 hashtag if you have a question that you really want to see covered or have covered. But we did have a question about any more or further tips about creating welcoming spaces for groups where there might be different mixes of different brain-friendly preferences. And I think that's in reference to both in person and digitally. I know you covered some of these in the talk, but I don't know if there's any more that you wanted to cover.
Jenny, do you have a ready answer to that question?
Sure, this is Jenny. So one of the things I think about is scheduling specific times to address different needs. And that always gives people a respectful out if they need to back out for a moment or two, but also lets them know when their need is going to be met. So for example, if chat is not able to be turned off in an interface, then we say we're going to be using chat in this specific way. And that lets everybody who wants to just go to town in the chat have a good old time over there. And the others that need quiet, they can actually just look away at that moment. How about you, Glenda? Do you have another thought?
Well, I just wanted to revisit my big learning moment. One of the reasons I often present with Jenny is I have a rule in my head. If Jenny asks me to do something, I say yes. Because every time I do something with Jenny, I learn. And in our last presentation that we did together, I had the audacity to suggest that we have breakout rooms. And I was going to make it small groups because I was going to force people to interact and force people to do things. And the smaller the group, the better. And Jenny went, no. And I was like, why? And she goes, that can be really, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And I was completely unaware of how that can be a negative experience for certain types of people. And it was such a profound learning for me that I literally took what Jenny said and went and presented it to my own internal training team. Because sure enough, my internal training team at DeCue was doing little breakout rooms. And they've now increased the size of them. And Jenny wasn't saying you don't ever have breakout rooms, but warn people that they're going to happen. Don't force everybody to speak. And I was like, whoa. So I learned from her all the time.
It's mutual.
Clear expectations are universally quite good, it seems. I also benefit from that as well. So thank you very much for reiterating the point of clear expectations for everyone in the most diverse way that you can possibly deliver. I think we've got time for one more question. So there's a question around if a person is not feeling comfortable, which is often apparent in some way, either visually or some way you can tell. Do you have any suggestions on how to make sure someone is comfortable if you can't maybe see them without fussing? And I have a little addition to this question, which is, and have you seen any differences across different cultures with this kind of need?
I think it's hard to tell. Jenny, do you have any ideas?
Well, I first want to caution people because what can look as physically uncomfortable to some may actually not truly be physical discomfort. And I often think about people who have differences in the way they express emotions and what gets reflected on their face. But the other thing to remember is, for example, even with presentations, some people may look uncomfortable and they're actually trying to step out of their boundaries. So always to consider how to put the control on the side of that individual. So you can actually at different times make announcements that are general and just give options for people to try out. I mean, that's one of the things I do. And I agree, it can be different culturally as well. Glenda, do you have a different way or another way that you handle that as well?
Well, I'm going to go back to the content warning and trigger warnings. The event was live. I was not in Eric Bailey's session, and I was watching people report it on Slack. And I knew that I couldn't fix it in the moment. And so I think that it's okay to not have everything figured out and to figure it all out in the moment. But when it's appropriate, research after, reach out to the people and say, if you thought somebody looked uncomfortable or expressed something uncomfortable, then reach out to them and don't say, I thought you looked uncomfortable, but say, are there any suggestions you have for improving how this event went? And just leave it open-ended and see if you can learn that way.
Great. Some excellent advice. And Glenda, Jenny, once again, thank you very much for that brain-friendly talk and everyone listening in, please do, rise to the challenge that Jenny and Glenda put out there, and tweet with the brain friendly hashtag some ways that you can make life, the world, digital spaces more welcoming for everybody. If you are watching along, then please head over to youtube.com/inclusivedesign24 and hit the like button for this talk. And while you're there, why not subscribe so you'll get notified about future events and activities. A reminder that Inclusive Design 24 is a respectful community, and you'll find our code of conduct linked from every page of the inclusivedesign24.org website. ID24, of course, was brought to you with thanks to all of our supporters, including Intopia, Fable, TPGI ARC, Adobe, Tetralogical, Intuit, InfoAxia, the Center for Inclusive Design, Web Directions AAA Conference, Adrian Roselli LLC, and Can Access. And Ariel and I will be back with you on the hour with the next of our talks. See you then.